It's great to be with you. You know, as we get started today, I wanted to start with a reminder. Christmas is less than 8 weeks away. Isn't that crazy? Some of you are like, yeah. If you're buying gifts for your kids, you're like, oh no. Yeah, buy them now. I've heard it said about parenting, I think it's also true about life. The days go slow, but the years go fast, right? And in just a few weeks, our lives are going to be in full swing of the holidays, and the inevitable burnout of January is coming, where we're just going to try to hunker down at home and just wait for spring. And try not to see anyone. You might think, I'm just going to do church at home online today, and don't do that. What if, here's the thing, but what if this year was different? You're like, yeah, I say that every year. I'm not going to let the holidays get me crazy, but they always do. No, for real. What if we actually entered the holiday season and came out on the other side with some peace and some quiet and some rest still available in our souls? And my guess is that would be completely different than the majority of us walk through the holidays and experience them. More often, most of us probably feel like Job. There's a book of the Bible. It's not actually Job. It's a guy's name. It's Job. And in Job 3:26, he says, I am not at peace, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes. And Kip's translation of that would be, all I want is some peace and quiet, but the troubles keep coming and distracting me from it all. I think all of us would love to experience the holiday season and come out the other side with these three things: peace and quiet and rest. But because of the pace of life we have gotten so used to, peace, quiet, rest end up feeling like they just belong in the fairy tales. And we've lived at a more hurried pace and frantic pace of life than ever before. And although last year seemed to slow that down a little bit, it seems like things are ramping back up, doesn't it? When our lives are maxed out, when we're living at capacity in our family, when we're living at capacity in our finance and in our faith, we soon begin to experience the consequences of those decisions. It's kind of like our cars. I don't know about you, but I'm not great with the whole maintenance of my car. I took my wife's car in this past week to get an oil change, and the mechanic was like, you got quite a bit of work to do here. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, it's got 160,000 miles. I was like, yeah. He's like, there's never been a tune-up done on this thing. Your spark plugs are shot. You need some hoses. Your radiator is also rusting out. And I'm like, oh, man. Okay, so I guess we got to do that. And it's it's kind of like, here's the crazy part. Driving the car, you wouldn't notice. It drove just fine. It got me from A to B. It wasn't making crazy noises. But the underlying issue was getting to the point where the engine was about to have some really serious problems. And this is how it is for many of us in our lives. We become so used to redlining in our life that we don't notice until something breaks or blows up. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about a cure that can help save the peace and joy in our lives that's being squeezed out, even though we don't realize it. And what we're looking at in this series, we're going to be talking about margin. Margin, creating some space in our lives before the burnout. Creating some space in our lives before things blow up. Here's a definition of margin for us. Margin is the amount that you have that is available beyond what is necessary. Margin is the amount that you have available beyond what is necessary. The space between what you have and what you need. What you can carry and what you're capable of carrying. If you have $100 and $80 in bills, how much margin do you have? $20. Some of you are like, come on, Pastor. It's Sunday. It's not math class. Let me show you how margin plays out in our lives. It's arriving a few minutes early to the meeting or to church so that you don't feel that hectic rush and that hurriedness. It's having money left over at the end of the month. It's that distance between you and your temptations rather than living on the moral edge of life. It's having and creating space for significant time with God. In other words, margin is what most of us don't have, right? And yet, what we often find to be true is that some of the best things in life happen in the margins, right? Some of the best times, some of the best memories. It's why you ask your kids, hey, what was your favorite thing about summer? They're probably going to mention something about family vacation, at least if they're younger and they still like hanging out with you, right? Because what vacation does is it's that forced margin as a family where we spend time and have fun, and some of the best times happen in the margin. And God knew that we would struggle with margin. He knew that this would be a challenge. He knew that we would overcommit and underdeliver. And so he has given us his word that's full of principles, full of stories, full of reminders about what we are to prioritize and what we should pursue with our lives. And in Luke chapter 10, if you've got a Bible, you can turn there. If you don't have a Bible, we'd love to give you one. You can come see me or Dustin or someone at guest services afterwards. We would love to get your information and give you a Bible. You can also scan that QR code because we all have been doing that. And you can just click on the Bible and it'll take you to Luke 10. But Luke 10 is a story of these two women, two sisters actually, Mary and Martha. They both had a similar opportunity to experience something incredible. But only one created the space to do it. And one of the sisters got mad, but the other sister found margin. And so let's pick up Luke chapter 10, verse 38. And you can scroll over if you're on the app or on the phone or turn over. Luke chapter 10, verse 38. It says, now they, Jesus and his disciples, went on their way. And Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And now, Mary comes and sits at Jesus' feet. This was a rare thing for women to be able to do, to sit at the feet of a rabbi in that day. And Martha is distracted by much serving. Some translations will say, with all the preparations. Now, notice here, Martha is not being distracted by frivolous or ungodly things. She was being distracted by things that any of us would get distracted by. Right? When you're having guests over to your house, you're like moving around the house and cleaning and roping in your husband and roping in your kids, and we're going to clean this place because we got guests coming over. My wife and I will often look at each other and say, hey, who are we having over this week? And then we look around the house and it's like there's only a few families that come over to the chaos. Everybody else we feel like we got to clean up for, right? And here Martha she's got Jesus coming to her house, in her house, and so she's like frantically moving and working and serving and making sure everything's just right. Now, I like to say it like this. What Martha is struggling with is the battle between what's important and what's more important, what's good and what's best. And I'll say it like this so often, a good thing will become a bad thing when it crowds out the best thing. And if you hang out here at Heritage for any length of time, you will hear me say that over and over. It is actually a phrase. It's not new to me. As a kid in youth group, my youth pastor used this line. I have never forgotten it. A good thing becomes a bad thing when it crowds out the best thing. And this is what Martha is battling with, some good things that are getting in the way of the best thing. Someone once said, if Satan can't make you really, really bad, he'll try to make you really, really busy, right? And Martha is experiencing the busyness. She was being distracted, not by bad things, just being distracted away from the best thing. What about you? What about you? What things are distracting you? What good things are pulling you away from and crowding out the best thing in your life? See, like Martha, you don't need to be distracted by bad things, just lured away from the best thing. And so often, it comes down to the battle between what's good and what's best. We all have things competing for our time, grabbing for our attention, And these things will never go away. This is called adulthood, right? Always going to be demands on our time. The challenge for us is to determine what's good versus what's best. And Martha, completely frustrated, finally comes to Jesus. She's on fire. She's coming in hot, all right? Verse 40, she's coming to Jesus. Martha was distracted and all the serving. She went to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me. Can you imagine? Martha, 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 Martha. Right? Martha was convinced, here's the thing, she was convinced she was doing the right thing. She thought what she was doing was good. And you know what? It was. It wasn't wrong for her to be doing what she was doing. And isn't that how it happens for so many of us when we live without margin? We take our priorities, we take our schedule, we take our frustrations and we leverage them onto other people. And we walk around with the assumption that if someone doesn't carry the same value or urgency that I do, then they must not care as much as I do. And so here Martha is convinced that she's the only one doing the right thing. Jesus, aren't you going to tell my sister to start helping me? This is what makes a series like this so challenging to teach. Because my guess is most of us would say, we're doing the right thing. We're doing good things. We're doing the necessary things. You're locked in, and you have no way around it. You think, look, the way I'm living, it's just how I got to live right now. You don't have control over the things in your life, and we think that, look, even if I could change it, then I'm going to miss out. My kids are going to be left behind. We're not going to experience the next thing to get us to the next area of success in life. And somewhere along the line, we started thinking and we started getting confused with what everyone else was doing in their life and thinking that that was God's best for ours. And we end up allowing and justifying the good things that we do that end up getting in the way and crowding out the best thing. Now let's be really clear. What's the best thing? Yeah, Sunday school answer. God, Jesus. When in doubt, Jesus, right? If you're wrong in that moment, at least you have the most important thing, right? The best thing is Jesus. Let's not get confused. There are lots of good things in this world. There is only one best thing. His name is Jesus. Look at what Jesus says to her. Jesus, don't you care that she's left me to serve all alone? Tell her to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you're anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. I like how the NIV paraphrase translates it and says, you're troubled and anxious about many things, but few things are needed. In fact, only one. Mary has chosen the good portion. Or the NIV says she has chosen what is better, which will not be taken away from her. Jesus is saying you're losing the battle between good and best, between important and most important. You both have the same opportunity to sit with me. You both have the same opportunity to be with me. You have the same opportunity to enjoy my presence, but only one of you has chosen to do so. And what Jesus is telling her is the choice is yours. What Jesus is telling us is that the choice is ours. Margin doesn't come from choosing what's good. It comes from choosing what's best. If you're taking notes, you may want to write that down as a reminder that the margin, the space that we're longing for and looking for, it doesn't come from choosing the good things in life, but it comes from choosing the best things in life. Reprioritizing some things. See, if you want breathing room in life, Jesus is saying the choice is yours. When you choose what is more important, when you choose the things in life, what is better, it's not going to get taken away from you. You may be tempted to fight back and say, that's just not reality. You live in pastor world, like live in the real world for a minute. Like that's just not how the real world works. Mary chose not just what was good, but what was best. What did that mean? It means she put aside the distractions, the things that would pull her away and get in the way of her sitting with Jesus. It means that she didn't care about the expectations of others like her sister demanding her help. But she spent time with Jesus. That was her choice. Not the distractions, not the expectations. No, I just need some time with Jesus. Let me put what's most important in place. And my question for us is, what have we chosen? What have you chosen? Is it kids' activities that stretch your schedule thin? An extra hour at work that pulls you away from family? A sleeping in or chores, extra TV at night? See, we don't always choose the bad things. We just don't always choose the best things. And this is where our margin gets swallowed up. These are the things that cause sporadic church engagement. These are the things that cause a lack of vibrant prayer life. This is what causes me to not be dedicated in time with Jesus. See, the hard thing is we rarely wake up with extra margin. I don't wake up and like, man, I got all this space and time. No, we wake up in the hurry and in the chaos, and we have to choose to be intentional and create some space in areas of our lives. So how do we do that? How do we get there? If you're here and you're saying, look, I'm ready to choose what's best, I just need to know how to do it. Hebrews 12 might be a really good place to start. Hebrews 12, verse 1 puts it this way. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking all the while to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. Look, we have so many witnesses that have gone before us and have given an example of how to do this. So let us also, and he gives us 3 actions. Lay aside all the weight and sin that clings so closely and gets in the way and distracts and holds us back. Let us lay aside and lighten the load so we can run the race set before us, all while looking to Jesus. Put away the distractions. Press forward towards what's best. Not to the standard of others or their expectations or their pace of living, but looking to Jesus as the author of my life. How do I get margin? I lay aside what's getting in the way of what's best. I run after what's best, not just what's good. And I look to Jesus for what my heart is longing for as I focus on what is best. Jesus first and Jesus most in my life. You know, last year, I was sure the pandemic was going to slow down the ability for us to launch a campus. I had been waiting and searching and longing for 7 years to do this thing, and then the pandemic hits, and I'm like, now we got to wait for this to get over. Now we got to get through this season. I even got to the point at one point thinking it's just never going to happen. People didn't want to rent to large groups of people. Buildings were shutting down. Little did I know that God was working at giving us margin to stop and see what he was doing and preparing us for. That when churches around the country were shutting down and closing their doors, God was working and preparing to launch a church that nobody saw coming. I don't know about you, but for far too long, I've been running at a pace and often run at a pace that God never intended. And I'm so thankful for the seasons where God steps in and slows me down to be able to see how he's moving and how he's working, to trust him, to pursue him. Makes me think of Proverbs 27:12. It says, the prudent see danger and hides himself. Right? The wise person, the prudent, sees danger and he takes protection, he takes precautions. But the simple or the simpleton, the idiot, goes on and suffers for it. And if you've ever driven through the mountains, you know the nerve-wracking experience it can be driving along the cliff edge and seeing this little guardrail and that's not going to stop me from anything, right? The wise person, the prudent, sees the danger, takes precaution, slows down, and makes sure that he can navigate safely. The dummy is like, let's see how fast I can take these turns, and the risk is he flies off the edge of the cliff, right? Are you living at such a speed that you're unaware and blind to the danger of burnout, to the danger of driving off the cliff? That you have a lot of good things, but none of the best things. This proverb reminds us that life was never meant to be lived at the red line. We were never meant to live life at this unsustainable pace. For us to begin to get into a rhythm where we can see God and his design for how he has called us to live and to experience life the way he intended it, we have to slow down. We have to embrace the divine delays, even like a global pandemic, because God is still working. And I've seen it in my life, and I've seen it in the life of our church, and I've seen it in many of your lives. And as we close today, let me ask you, how's the pace of your life? Are you living with margin? Are you living with peace? Do you feel restful? Or are you overwhelmed and burdened? Because if you feel like life is squeezing the peace out of you, you don't have to continue living with that kind of rhythm. In fact, Jesus came to bring a new solution. In Matthew 11, and I close with this. Matthew 11, Jesus is talking and he says, "Come to me." Matthew 11:28. Jesus says, "This is what I want you to know. You can come to me if you are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Jesus says, "I will give you rest." Not your bank account, that won't give you rest. Not your family, that won't always give you rest. Not your stuff, not that TV show, not the extra entertainment. No, I will give you rest. Not an extra night of sleep on fallback Sunday time change. No, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. And that's kind of strange language maybe for us today. He's talking about like a farming yoke that would attach two animals together that they would be able to pull. And so often we do life with a heavy yoke and burden, and Jesus is like, no, take my yoke, because it's lighter. I can do all the work. I can do all the pulling. Come to me if you are burdened and weary. I will give you rest. Learn from me. Take my yoke upon, for I am gentle and humble in heart. Did you know this is one of the only places in Scripture that Jesus, in his own words, tells us what his heart is like? We see it exemplified and lived out in his life, but this is one of the only places Jesus says, you want to know my heart? I'll tell you, it's gentle. It's humble. You won't come to me and find an angry God yelling at you and telling you to get better and do more and shaming you. You will find a God who says, I love you. Come to me. If you're burdened and heavy, I can give you rest. I'm gentle and humble in heart. You will find rest for your soul. Ever wonder why you can't find peace and quiet and rest in your life with God? Maybe it's because you need to take an honest inventory of the margin of your life. Margin is about intentionally creating space for what's best, for what's most important in life, and it begins by slowing down and walking with God. Allowing God to change my heart, to change my schedule, to change my priorities. And so I encourage you, accept Jesus' invitation to rest today by laying aside the distractions, by persevering through the struggles and running the race with perseverance and keeping your eyes on Jesus all the while, the only one who can offer peace, the only one who can give us hope and joy and rest in the circumstances of life.